Design Award winner for large multiple housing, which the judges selected for its civic scale, its sense of placemaking at Surrey University, and its exemplary inclusion of environmental design, is the Manor Park campus at Surrey University. And I'm here today with the architect Jeremy Estop from MJP Architects, and I'm going to ask Jeremy a few key questions. When you set out on the project, what were some of the key challenges that you had to address?
Of course, it's quite unusual to design a building on a greenfield site surrounded by open land, and more so because the land's in a state of transition. In due course, the campus will expand across the area. It wasn't a complete blank canvas. Of course, the university had a master plan for the campus development, but we didn't know the exact details of the buildings that would be next to ours. In a way, we were creating our own context, and we were creating part of the context for those buildings which will come later. That's quite a different sort of challenge to the more common situation nowadays, building in a town centre where the neighbouring buildings are already there. I think the other key thing was it's quite a large development, and we were concerned to try and control the scale and the height of the buildings.
And when you were thinking about the project at the beginning, what were your key objectives?
We wanted to control the height of the buildings and the scale of them, and to let them be rooted in the landscape, preserve as much as possible of the trees and so on. But equally importantly, we wanted to create a place to live for the students which would feel like home, a place which would feel welcoming, convivial, somewhere where it's easy to make friends. And there was one key move that we made in the development of the design which helped us to achieve both of those, and that was basing the planning around courtyards. And the great thing about courtyards is that they do allow the most efficient use of the land. So that helped us to achieve the first objective by minimising the height. And of course we tried to reduce the height further by putting the top floor of rooms in the roof space to bring the eaves down further. From the point of view of a living environment, I think there's something about courtyards which is almost universally appealing. There's something about them which they have a human scale to them, and it's quite easy to identify with them as, you know, the place where you live. And hopefully, you know, the places where you meet people or bump into friends.
And now that you've finished the project and you're coming back to it, what are some of the things that give you the most delight? The
gables at the ends of the buildings facing the road. Thinking about how the buildings were going to sit in this semi-rural landscape, we had this idea that this would be something like a series of converted barns sitting in that semi-rural landscape.
So, having finished the project and you've got some wisdom and experience of it, what would you recommend to somebody starting out on a similar project?
Campuses tend to allow very free movement, and you know, you can wander everywhere, but in residential buildings I think you need some sense of privacy in order to give you a sense of ownership. In this building, obviously the road along the front is very public, but as you come into the courtyards you sort of cross a threshold, and although there's no control point, you're then in a sort of semi-private space, and then you come into one of these entrances like we're sitting in, and then you're in the totally private space, and I think that gradation is quite important.
So one of the aspects of the project that the judges particularly enjoyed were some of the qualities in the brickwork design.
So typically on the 4-storey elevations, the ground floor windows and the top floor windows are pushed back. The first and second floors come forward, so it gives a way of creating a sort of base, middle and top to the building. In special areas we've used some of these glazed bricks, so at each of the entrances there's a different colour of glazed brick to give a slightly different identity to each entrance, and then other details woven into the brickwork as well, like stacked bonded bricks in some locations.